Hi, I'm Brian Dunn, and welcome to the most important podcast ever. What makes it so important? It's not about me, it's about you. This podcast is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, the moments of resilience, the lessons learned, the small acts that made a big difference. From retail floors to boardrooms, we'll share the untold stories that shape lives and careers. This week, our guest is Joe Kalkman. Joe Kalkman is a consummate HR professional. He's worked for some big companies, names you know: Dow Chemical, Northwest Airlines then, Delta Airlines now, Best Buy, Anthem, and CenterCare. And I'm sure I'm missing some. I got the opportunity to work with Joe pretty closely on some pretty meaty issues. And while we didn't always agree, we always had robust discussion. Joe was always well prepared and brought great ideas to the table, and many of which made a big difference. Um, hey, Joe, thanks so much for being here.
Hey Brian, it's great to see you and happy to talk with you and all of your listeners as well.
Well, thank you so much. I gave my take on your background. I'd love for you to add any of the mortar that should be there that I missed.
The only thing I'd add to that is I have spent the bulk of my career working in HR, but about a third of it was outside of HR and other line functions, which I think made me a better HR person, getting a chance to be the customer
Yeah,
of HR as well
yeah.
along the way. And I think the opportunities we have in our career sometimes are planned and predictable, and oftentimes they're unexpected. And at least my own journey, there's a lot of growth and learning that came from the surprises along the way.
I'm paraphrasing, but man plans and God laughs.
Yeah.
It's always so interesting um, where the roads take us. But I do agree with you. If you're going to be an HR professional or a marketing professional, whatever it is, I think running a business and being part of leadership of those things really helps a great deal. Um, one of the place I want to start tonight with you, Joe, is on talent management
Hmm.
and what it looked like then and what it looks like now. I'd love to get your perspective.
There's a lot that's changed, which I'm happy to talk about in just a second. But I want to underscore a couple things that I think haven't changed at all. Um, there's dignity in work, and people like having a job, and they like having a job that they like. And it was true 20 years ago, and it's true now. And people want to belong. They want to be connected to something and to others in a way that makes them feel connected. And I think that hasn't changed. And I also think people want to make a difference, and that sense of agency and to being able to contribute. And that I think was true 20 years ago. I think it's true now. I think it's early in one's career. I think it's way at the end of one's career. Those things are kind of very human, and they really motivate us to
Yeah.
to to put up with all the crap that comes with working sometimes because
Uh,
it's meaningful.
I just want to add one thing because I think what you said is so important. I want to underscore it. There is dignity in work,
Mhm.
and people want to know that what they do matters, and they want to know that people see that what they do matters.
Yep.
And I know it's simple, but I think it's so important.
I agree with you 100%, Brian. Um, so a lot of what we do from a talent management standpoint really is to try and tap into that, I think. And whether that's, again, a frontline leader with the team and first time leader in that role, whether it's someone who's in the C-suite and trying to keep track of, tens of thousands of careers. Um, those are pretty important. But gosh, the change in the workforce
Yeah.
since when you and I worked, or when we started in our jobs till now, the generational changes have different expectations. It seems around what being at work should be. Certainly, COVID has changed our understanding of remote work and hybrid work, and being able to be productive. And the technology is perhaps the biggest change, because one, it allows things like this conversation. We're not in the same place,
Right.
and our listeners aren't sitting in an audience in front of us, but we all can be in this shared space and create a community around this topic or this conversation that can be really powerful and meaningful. We couldn't have done that, when I started working. That's a big change. And then AI brings in a whole different level of opportunity for tapping into creativity, resources, and being productive and making a difference, like we just talked about, in very different ways.
We're going to get at AI because I have a lot of questions for you about that.
Mhm.
But I do want to talk about COVID a little bit, and you touched on remote work.
Mhm.
I think it's so interesting. And years ago, of course, we both worked for a company that had a ROW program, results-oriented work. I think one of the good things that came out of COVID, if it's not too soon to say something good came out of it, is a recognition that remote work is not only legitimate, in some cases, remote work is very beneficial for organizations and for their employees. And I'm just wondering, do you see a hybrid model emerging, or do you think we're going back to what it was?
I think there's a hybrid model that's here to stay. I think we're still swinging the pendulum around, finding a stasis around that, a balance around that. For some jobs, you got to be in person. If you're working in physical retail and the door's open, someone's got to be there in the store, right? I worked in healthcare. If you're running hospitals and clinics, I mean, you can do a lot with telemedicine, but when someone's in the ER, you got to be there. So there's on-site work that will always be on-site. And I think there has been for a long time some work that was easily done remotely, and that set got huge during the pandemic, where we learned all kinds of ways of accomplishing work in that remote space. But the advantage to an employer, if you can allow for remote work, is often you can tap into a much broader talent pool. If you only can talk to or hire people who are within driving distance of coming into the office or coming into the plant or the store, whatever your work site, let me put it that way, that limits the number of folks that you can attract into your organization. When there's room for remote work, now zip code is not a confining variable to the talent pool. That's a huge win if you can figure out how to work that way.
So, Joe, we've talked a lot about how things were then and now. And we've all just been, I guess it's been some years now since, but the COVID experience, in the residue of the COVID experience, how do you think that's changed the employer and employee experience? And do you think it were temporal changes, or do you think some of these things are going to be permanent?
I think it was an extraordinary time, and I think it's going to take a while to digest it. I think I'll answer your question, but I want to timestamp it here and reserve 2 years from now or 5 years from now to say, well, actually, because we're still figuring out the impact of it. If you think about what happened worldwide and certainly in the United States, to stop schools doing in-person education, and so many businesses closing and so many employees being sent home, it was just a remarkable disruption. And I think disruption, especially societal disruptions, are a source of great creativity and innovation, because by definition, what's normal isn't normal. And for employers, we talked about hybrid work. I mean, how do you produce what you need to produce as an employer if your employees are not on site like they have, quote, always been? Big change. I think the relationship between employer and employee was in some cases hardened and emboldened, because with so many other things being disrupted and unsure, that job and knowing that you had an income and that you could continue to work was really important. And for many employees, again, their job didn't get disrupted. Again, I worked in healthcare, and so many of the healthcare providers had to show up and do their jobs like they always had, knowing that there were so many others who were staying home and doing their job or were displaced for a temporary time. And so that really, I think it caused a lot of people to think about their career choice and what role does their job play in their life and in their family's life. And for some, it was then, or it has proven to be a pivot point to redirect their career.
Mhm.
We had a number of folks who just said, I'm not going to keep doing what I was doing, and because of the disruption, they're now on a different path. I think for others, it reinforced that. And oh my gosh, I mentioned the creativity. We had for a while there, we had a lot of folks who were sick with COVID working in healthcare, and we're doing curbside testing and innovation. You didn't have to come into the office to test. And this was before all the kits were mailed to people's homes, right? And so you had to go somewhere to get tested for COVID. And here in Minnesota, it's cold in the winter, as we know well. And that curbside testing job was a horrible job for folks when it was 10 below outside. And in one of our hospitals, a couple of creative employees said, I know a lot about staying warm in the cold out here, and they brought in their fish shed, their fish house, and set it up on the curb. And I was like, this is brilliant. We sent that across all our locations. And so if they didn't have a physical space set up where they could do curbside testing safely, we went ahead and helped them get a fish house on site so they could stay warm, at least in between cars.
I think I love that. I love that sort of battlefield innovation. I am optimistic that there are several challenges, societal challenges we have faced, that I think there's some answers that have been potentially unlocked through the COVID experience. I think about the challenge of parents. And does dad stay home or does mom stay home? And in this world where there's hybrid working, which I think is here to stay, because I think it's become an employee expectation. I think it's a difference maker for a lot of people. I mean, how great is it not to have the commute? How great is it to be able to get up at 7:30 instead of 5:30 to get to work? And I am hopeful that that's going to help young families in particular, and I have a bias around young families, as I know you have an interest in that too, in having them build out a better work experience and a better family experience. Do you think those things are going to settle in and become part of it?
I do. And I think one of the moving parts of that is the expectations of the emerging workforce and what they're willing to do for a job, for a career. And the flip side of that too is the demand for talent. As the demographics of our society change, and folks like us who are retired or retiring and not spending 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week working, that work gets displaced, gets absorbed by new folks who might not be working those hours, or technology changes in what it takes to accomplish the same output. There's a lot of transformation that's happening in the space of workforce, and part of it is just the expectations of the emerging worker that's different than what I expected when I joined the workforce.
I think that's well put. And I think that stretch when the world shut down, except for, as you mentioned, our emergency workers, et cetera. And by the way, we shouldn't just gloss by that. It would be very difficult to have the whole world staying home and you're going in every day, diving into the middle of it.
Yep.
That's I can't salute those people more emphatically. It is clearly, though, become a real expectation of this workforce and a competitive advantage for companies that offer it versus those that don't.
Oh, I agree. And I think that as the continued war for talent evolves, where it's always the case when you have a job that can match the needs and the expectations of a talented worker,
Mhm.
then that's a really good thing. Then those matches are easy to make, and work is fun when that happens. And when you have more jobs than there are workers, or there's more workers than there are jobs, the fun quotient goes down quite a bit.
Yeah. Yep. And that is really one of the ultimate retention strategies, isn't it?
Yeah.
Creating an environment where you can match up your employees' expectations with the needs of the business.
Mhm.
Really, really interesting. And I could spend hours just thinking about that. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, we don't know yet what's going to shake out from this permanently. But I think it's safe to say the employees' expectations have changed significantly.
Yes, I would agree.
Yep. And I also think the old knock against remote work was we can't measure productivity and we can't measure this and we can't measure. I think we absolutely can measure. If we're not able to measure, then we're looking at the wrong things.
I agree with you, and I also think we sometimes maybe overestimated our ability to measure productivity of on-site work.
I
So we're looking for a baseline and better or worse than. How confident are we that we knew what was going on?
I think that's really well put, and I think it's so true. And I'll tell you something else. This is always a pet peeve of mine. And one of the things I noticed is my sons were working remotely during COVID. Is the number of meetings was reduced to from nice to have to necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of those meetings aren't missed. And I would put it to you, and I'm sure we agree about this. If you can edit the meeting flow, I think productivity is going to naturally, because I don't think the meetings were as productive as people like to think.
I think the productive meeting is rare, though powerful, when it happens. It's a multiplier when you can make it work. A really good town hall, right? Or a holiday kickoff like we used to do. Good heaven. Yep. In an hour or in a day, could set up a month's worth of productivity if it's done well.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I'm a huge believer in a town hall. I think anytime you can connect employees with management, I think it's a good thing. Hey, I want to turn and look at AI. There's a few things I want to get to, and AI is one of them. And I'm really curious. There's so much in the news about layoffs being AI driven and that it's the end of the world as we know it. And I'm just curious how you're thinking about it. And many of our listeners send me questions about asking for thoughts about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what people can do to prepare themselves for an AI-enabled world.
First thing I would say, Brian, is, and we have the good fortune of a shared experience at Best Buy, working there during a time when technology was pretty disruptive, earlier versions of technology.
Yep.
Right? And the iPhones, as an example, the way music transformed from quadraphonic stereos to is the
quadraphonic stereos,
right?
Love it.
There is there's a long history of new technology changing the way we do something. And guess what? As humans, we have a long history of figuring it out.
That's right.
And so I would just, first thing out of the gates would be just reassure folks that we're very capable organisms with powerful brains to figure out not only to create new technology, but then to figure out how to harness that for advantage. This is our next version of that. I do think it's qualitatively different. Maybe it's a quantum change, not a step change, or just an iteration of, because of the power that is represented by artificial intelligence. But I think the one of the most important things we can do is not to be afraid of it. And I would say, to if not yet embrace it, play with it. Use it where it doesn't matter, just to see gee whiz, how does this work? Well, that's really cool. It's not what I expected. That's exactly what I expected. But I think of this is a very, very, very simplistic example, but I remember my mom, God bless her, um, who raised 10 kids in a house and in a kitchen that was just way too small, um, for years said, I don't need a microwave,
Right.
right? I make
Right.
every meal
Right.
just in my stove, right? And then she got a microwave, and oh my gosh, it like changed everything.
Right.
But
Right.
it was the other thing that she would not let in her kitchen for years. And then all of a sudden, once that happened, it was like it changed things. I think there was an opportunity for us to say, well, AI is different. I don't understand it. I don't know about it. And there's a lot of chatter out there. It's still out there, it's still other and not me. And I would just encourage folks to learn about it, to try it hands on. And it's that process of discovery begins then.
Yeah. I'm very lined up with you on that. People have to play with it and get familiar as they can with it. Even something as simple as playing with Chat GPT.
Hmm.
They have to find a way to understand it, to take some of to demystify it
Right.
a bit. Also, I think we get caught, and this is so human in every major sort of transformational change. We get caught in the paradigm of taking today's work and saying, okay, this is what we do, and now we're going to apply this new tool to it. I think what AI is going to do is enable companies, organizations, people to do more.
Oh yeah.
And I think it can increase the reach of companies in a way that can absolutely help drive what the employer needs. But I also think it's going to increase the individual productivity and make our employees more efficient. And who doesn't want to be more efficient?
I just posted on my LinkedIn today, in fact, um, an article that my nephew wrote. He talked about how he uses AI for presentations, and what used to take, you know, um, hours now takes minutes, and a very nice how to. And the what I really appreciated about it was his description of the part that he still does in his head, and as before he sort of involves the AI capabilities. And with that, then there's still work that he has to do around that. Then the AI just accelerates all kinds of stuff that would take him hours and hours and hours to do. And then he's got a couple products that he can work with and trade to take a slide from this and part of that and put it together and then make sure it's still authentic and it sounds like him or it sounds like the brand that he's representing. And so it's not an abdication at all of being the author, but it's
Yeah.
a way of doing the work that is so much more productive, and arguably he's got better resources than he would have been able to do on his own.
I think that is an excellent example. I'm gonna check that article out for sure. I just posted an article a little while ago on LinkedIn about this. I was responding to an article somebody else wrote, and you know what's not AI is not going to do? AI is going to be this great tool. AI is not going to replace leadership. AI can't lead with heart. AI can't lead with, okay, we're going through this tough time. Here's what we're going to all do together. And I think that AI is going to be a great tool, and it's going to require some different skills from us. And I think that starts with your point, which I think is right on the money. Get as comfortable with it as you can. Find a free online course for AI, take it,
Mhm.
learn as much as you can, and remove as much of the fear as you can. And I gotta believe companies are going to leverage this tool to do more. It's not about making today more efficient. And for some people, it may be, but I think those that are wise are going to leverage this, and it could become a really important, it's going to be a growth engine.
Yeah. Oh, that's the saying right now, right? That AI is not going to replace you, but someone who uses AI might.
Yeah, no,
Right.
that's right.
It becomes a capability, a skill set, that workers today, whether they're in the workforce or joining it, it's a capability, a skill set that will be important to have. And where I worry the most with this is that early career part of our workforce.
Yep.
If with the capabilities of AI, do you need a financial analyst to crunch numbers?
Right.
That entry level first job in finance, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
maybe first two jobs in finance can
Yep.
be automated. So now someone who's starting their career, they can't come in at that third level of financial specialist, or right? How did they get that hands-on experience
Yep.
that for up until this point has been part of the way you get there, and replace finance with any other discipline.
No,
Um,
that's right.
right.
That's right.
And that'll be one of the workforce challenges, is building those bridges and providing the kind of experience and training and confidence that comes from those early career experiences, so that as they progress in their career, they're confident in their jobs and able to do it.
Yeah. And I'm not naive about this. I understand the profitability pressures companies feel and everything else. And we've been focused on what employees need to do. There's things companies need to do, because where's their first tier after those first or two entry level jobs or intro jobs? Where's their tiers of leadership going to come from?
Mm-hmm.
Because historically they've come from those ranks. So employers are going to have to innovate how they are preparing their next level of leaders.
Yep. And I think I just want to underscore your comment earlier around hopefulness about this. I think this is actually a really hopeful time, but I also know that there's some real challenges we're going to have to sort through. And one of the unintended, though, emerging phenomena from the pandemic for younger folks was, folks in high school and college who went through those quarantine years lost a lot of development,
Yep.
social development, personal development that happens in the academic year by being remote. And that's very hard to replace. And so now they're entering the workforce, or they're in their first level jobs. And some of them might even be becoming a frontline supervisor here in a year or two. And they've got a different kind of experience during some really formative parts of their lives that I think will create some challenges around how that then translates into the kinds of things we expect great leaders to do almost instinctively.
Right, right. And I think we do expect leaders to do things instinctively. And again, Joe, it's going to be fascinating to see what the long-term impact of the world closing down for a while has on that. Certainly, if not long-term, certainly in the midterm. Certainly in the midterm. I want to ask you, and I'm mindful of time slipping away from us here. I get a lot of letters from emails from people, not letters.
I was going to say letters.
Yeah, what a novel concept. Saying that they've applied for a job on Indeed, say,
Yeah,
and they don't hear back. And the thought is that AI is scouring these applications. And do you have any advice for these folks that are having difficulty?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, they're probably right. I mean, applicant tracking systems, ATS, particularly for large employers, have been around for a while, even before AI. And keywords, even when I was working with you at Best Buy, I think we got 3 million applications a year to work at Best Buy. Great employer, right?
Yeah.
Great place to get a job. How do you manage the applicant flow of 3 million applications, right? There's automation when you're at scale like that. There's a layer of automation that just helps refine that until the recruiters and the store managers and folks can actually engage in that. AI sort of hypercharges that ability, and in some ways does a better job of tagging those resumes that best match what's documented in the job.
Gotcha.
Right? They're not making a judgment on the character of the candidate or the actual sort of wealth of the job itself and what it takes. What it's using, what the automation is using, is the documentation of the job and the documentation that's provided in the resume as submitted, or the answers on Indeed or LinkedIn or wherever else whatever mechanism you're using to correspond with the company. And so the quality of that match of those words and phrases is what will increase someone's likelihood of getting seen in the process. Other things that help, which is not new, do they know someone at the company? Do they know someone who knows someone who has a cousin who works at the company? Is there any way there'll be that networking component, even for big employers who have hundreds or thousands of applicants? Having someone signal, pay attention to this one, is a helpful thing. It's not required, and it's certainly not the only thing that matters, but it's one of those things that help. The other thing would be then, like I said before, around practicing with AI, take your resume as it is and submit it to have chat GPT or whatever, put in a prompt, say, there's lots of different, you can Google different prompts around there around the best way to update this resume for a job in engineering in medical fields, right? You can tailor your prompts, what you're looking for, and you'll get feedback or a new version of your resume that'll come that from the perspective of, so that those matches that happen automatically, you have the best shot of that. It can't change who you are. It can't change experience that you have. You can't invent a job you didn't have. It's not on your resume. But if it's there already, it might help show it in a way that the system can recognize it better.
You can even put in the prompt, I'm applying for a job at Target.
Yeah. Right.
And by all means, people should do that.
Yeah.
And it won't get you the job, but it may get you to the next discussion.
Right. And the other thing I would say is, particularly if you're interested in applying for jobs with large employers, one of the advantages of that is there's lots of employees at larger employers, so there's a better chance of somehow networking in to connect to that. But you also know the candidate pool is a lot larger.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you stand out from a large candidate pool? And again, if it's just what you're submitting to LinkedIn or to Indeed or Monster or any others, then those are then look for ways that you can distinguish yourself from other candidates.
I'm going to want to have you back, Joe, to talk about this as it unfolds over the course of the months in the year ahead. But before I let you go, I do want to touch on two things quickly. I'd love to hear about what you're doing at Carlson.
Yeah.
And I know you're very involved with the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm hoping you could talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I retired last year and have had a chance to stay active. My phone rings and I talk to folks, that kind of thing. But I also have gotten a chance to do some guest lecturing at the Carlson School at the University of Minnesota, and both in the business program with the undergrads, but also in the HR program with the grad students. And it's been just a treat to, in even our conversation, I've mentioned early career folks a couple of times. Part of that is just the little bit of time I've been able to spend with folks who are on campus and are earnestly thinking about what's my career going to be and how do I prepare for it. And their expectations and their experiences in some ways are what you would expect someone who's in their early 20s and thinking about the future with optimism and a little bit of dread. And then also some of it is very, very different perspectives than what I had when I was that age too. And so I get a chance to learn from them as I share a little bit of experience. But then the other thing is, I've been involved with nonprofits for a while, but I'm currently serving on the board of the Boys and Girls Club. And one of the things I most appreciate about the work they do is their commitment to do whatever it takes, the mission statement, do whatever it takes to unlock the potential of every child. Right? There's this notion that children have within them the stuff that it takes to be wonderful in so many ways. And some kids have an easier path of finding that and learning that about themselves, and others have a really hard path about learning that about themselves. And the work they do to provide the best opportunities and the best mechanisms and the best experiences right there in their own community. They don't have to go away for that. It's right there. And just to unlock that potential is I just think such important work. And particularly at a time when it's tricky sometimes. It's tough being a kid these days.
For sure.
The work there is really, I think, important, and I find it really rewarding too. So
I think that's awesome, Joe. I think it's great. I really thank you for your time. It's been a very interesting conversation. It has zipped by, and again, we'll do it again soon.
All right, Brian, take care.
You too. Well, that's it for this episode of the most important podcast ever. A big thanks to Joe Kalkman for sharing his story and for sharing some real and tangible advice. Get your hands on AI and play with it. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, please share it with somebody that would find it meaningful. And who wouldn't find this meaningful? You can watch and listen to us on our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on social media, and you can get us on podcast wherever you pick up your pods. So thank you so much to Joe, and an even bigger thank you to all of you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.